Welcome to your 12-minute HR lesson. Today, we're going to talk about the art of the deal. No, not that art of the deal. We're going to talk about how do you start a conversation about a negotiated exit. This is complex stuff, so please bear in mind that this is educational only and does not constitute legal advice. But let's go. We're doing things a little bit differently today. Normally I would start with something broad, something abstract, link it back to work, and then give you a takeaway at the end to say, right, this is what you need to think about in this broad, overarching philosophical concept. Today we're doing things a little bit different. We are getting there, but we're going to start off with something very specific and very technical. What we're talking about is a proposal in law. It's a bill. It's not even necessarily going to go through. It probably will. I can't see any reason why it won't. It might fall over in select committee, but this isn't really something that will. It's not massively contentious. What I'm talking about is the Termination of Employment by Agreement Amendment Bill to the Employment Relations Act in New Zealand. If you're listening from outside of New Zealand, don't worry, there is some relevance to you. Hang on in there with me. There's two parts to it. One is that you can agree to terminate employment, that an employer can make an offer to an employee to terminate their employment. There be a specified sum for a full and final settlement. And the second part is that negotiation to do so is inadmissible in court. The overall gist and the long and the short of it is to say, you can say to someone, do you want to talk about you leaving and we providing you a settlement agreement? And to do so is not grounds for constructive dismissal, or essentially that's not admissible in court. So it's not wrong to have a conversation with someone about them potentially leaving. Now here's the interesting thing about it. It's really unclear to which this is a solution to an actual problem. The extent to which it is a problem is quite grey. If an employer were to say to an employee right now, hey look, we are thinking about offering you a settlement. How about we offer you a settlement for you to go? Is that a breach of good faith? Well, no, not really. You're making them an offer. They don't have to agree to it. The mere act of having a conversation with someone about coming to an agreement is not a breach of good faith. Specifically, the only way that this would really play out is that the employer makes an offer, the employee doesn't like the offer, rejects the offer, then says that was constructive dismissal or unjustified disadvantage by you merely making an offer to me. That's somewhat of a long bow to draw. Now, it's very understandable that the employee will feel that way, and we'll get to that. I'm presenting this is how it could be done very reasonably. This is how it could be done positively and proactively. I could easily have picked scenarios in which it really was a little bit of a Clayton's choice, a little bit of a catch-22. Either you leave or you'll be fired is a very different scenario. Unfortunately, the answer to a lot of these things depends on how it goes, how it was done. But it's grey as to whether or not the mere act in itself is a wrong thing to have done. It can be handled well, it could be handled badly, but is the actual action grounds for constructive dismissal or unjustified disadvantage at the moment? And I would say it's unclear. Now, sorry, quick interruption for the ad. At Pragmatic HRN, we are primarily an HR training organisation. Most of what we do is upskilling and helping HR professionals to think. Rather than telling them what to do, rather than simply in A then do B, we help people understand the issues that they are dealing with at a fundamental level so they can deal with them themselves. These podcasts really are just a series of teasers, a series of tasters of how we can upskill you as an HR professional. For example, we do run a training course on how to offer settlements and how to resolve mediations. A primary tool for this training is webinars. This can be done either live in an online session, or alternatively, if the timing doesn't suit you, you can also buy pre-recorded at a lower price. Have a look at our website, Pragmatic HRM, for all of our courses and how you can access them. So I've got a circle that I need to square. I've just told you that an employer can offer a settlement, say, hey, do you want to go? And not be wrong by doing so. But on the other hand, an employee can feel betrayed, can feel justifiably betrayed by the mere act of offering. So how does that work? The best way to understand this is the concept of the psychological contract. If you've not come across the concept of the psychological contract, I'd go away and have a look into it. It's very useful at understanding what's going on below. And it essentially works like this. There is a legal contract that we sign for employment, but employment is more than just a contract. It's more than just the relationship between us and the guy who we pay to build a shed for us. It is a commitment. It's an engagement. It's an intertwining of mutual expectations and codependency. We depend upon our employer to look after us, and vice versa. I try to avoid relationship analogies, but there is one in here, and that's similar to if two people start going out, if they essentially agree that they are boyfriend and girlfriend, or girlfriend and girlfriend, or boyfriend, or what have you, but they've made a decision. They haven't entered into any legal agreement. They're not now covered by de facto law, but they have mutual expectations about what the other will or will not do, because there's a need for that for emotional safety. We have a similar type of emotional relationship with our employer that we commit to when we legally sign the documents. And the reality is offering a settlement is a major breach of that psychological contract. It essentially is ripping it up. If you ever said to an employee, hey, look, do you want to talk about you leaving? That's it. It's all over. There's no coming back from this. By you saying, we would rather pay you money and you not be here anymore, you've essentially signed the death warrant of that psychological contract. It's almost impossible to recover, short of a new manager, short of a team change on the employer's side. The mere act of offering a settlement is completely destructive to the psychological contract. So the question is, does this amendment change that? No. If you were to put a settlement on the metaphorical table, if you were to have that conversation, the reality is 80% of the problem is the termination of the psychological contract. The legal implications of what you've done is only 20%. So here's a situation that you will find yourself in every so often, hopefully not all the time, a situation where there is something in process that will very likely lead to termination. We're going through a performance management process, doing an investigation. Often, not all the time, but sometimes in those circumstances, there is just a pragmatic solution of a settlement that it's more beneficial for both the employer and the employee to call it early rather than go all the way through to the sticky end. Performance is a good example of this. You've started them on a PIP. You've been talking about their performance for months beforehand. The PIP is going to take at least 3 months to get anywhere before you get to that point of termination. The probability of them turning it around is quite low because you've already been through months of informal training and upskilling. We can't say that they won't make it, but it's not looking likely. And going through months of them underperforming is going to be disruptive. It's going to be difficult for the manager. It's going to be difficult for you. It's going to be difficult for the business. And how much actual work are we going to get out of them in that time? It's negligible. It's 50-50. So generally speaking, when we're getting to that point where the PIP is likely to lead in termination, it's more beneficial for us for them to go early And likely it's more beneficial for them to go early because they haven't been terminated. If anybody asks them, why did you leave? Oh, well, I chose to resign. It's much more face-saving for them without going through the pain and the trauma of going through a performance management process all the way through to termination. So ideally, getting a settlement offer on the table, it's suitable for everybody. But the question is, how do you get there? Because the safe thing is to do nothing. The low-risk play is to sit there and wait for it to play out. But on the other hand, if there is a genuine option, albeit harder to get to, of calling it early and saving everybody a lot of pain, trouble and expense, often that's the thing that we want to have a good look at. It's a higher risk strategy, but it's something but sometimes it's worth pulling it off if you can do it. It's higher risk because you've snapped that psychological contract. By setting foot on that path means that you've broken the spell. You've snapped the illusion that you're still trying. They now know there's no pretense anymore. They know that you've lost faith in them. Legally, you've got a good defense, but their heart will go out of it immediately. So how do you get there? So there's lots of different ways. Here's a suggestion, and I do have to remind you, this is just educational. A good way of dealing with this is a go-between. And the easiest way to find go-betweens is either their representative or the employer's representative. Just so, for instance, they bring a lawyer, they bring an advocate, they bring their parent, they bring their sibling. They are someone you can have a conversation in which you can bring up a settlement as a potential option. And that's not a direct discussion with the employee, but it's a good avenue to open the door to that conversation to see if they are interested in walking through it. The employer representative can also be that go-between. That could be the HR person, whether or not they're internal or external. They can go and say, hey, do you want me to talk to the boss about this? Sometimes you even get two HR people involved, one of which is the person helping the employer. Sometimes the HR person is supporting the employee, or the employee has reached out because they don't know what to do about something. Sometimes a different HR person who's made a connection can say, hey, look, do you want to talk about this? That's a pretty rare circumstances, but it has happened. I've seen it happen. Look, how are you going on your PIP? Do you think you're going to make it? Do you want me to go and find out if there is an option here? If they say no, sure, no harm done. If they say yes, that gives both parties a plausible out. Because the risk that we're looking at is what happens if a deal can't be done? What if they expect way too much? And how do we walk back from that? Because that's what we need to focus in on. How do we preserve the psychological contract if the deal doesn't work out? We can walk down that path, but how do we kick the can down the road that the contract hasn't been breached just by starting the journey? How do we start a journey of talking and exit with a person without breaking the psychological contract? That's the trick. That's the question. And that is the art. And we made it to the end. That's more for me. I record and edit these myself. So I tried getting someone else to do it, but found actually I can do it better myself, because what I like to do is record all of these in one go and then fix and patch them if I'm just not quite getting the point right, or if I'm rambling a bit too much. That one required a lot of fixing. As always, thank you for listening. If you want to check out our services, pragmatichrm.nz. If you want to look at our courses, pragmatichrm.nz. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Thanks.